people that's out there that say that there's no such thing as select racism and we can be successful like everybody else. Would you fail to understand? A lot of you people, for one, are very disingenuous and you're very delusional because at one point you will have to admit, obviously, that this country has practiced a system of non-justice. They had actually practiced a system that benefited them, where they mistreated African Americans for a period of 500 years. That's not something I'm making up. That's history. That's not my opinion. You will have to admit that systematic racism was a prevalent factor in the 60s, so to say, because they like to talk about racism in the 60s. So that being said, the question that's never answered from Ben Shapiro, Candace Owens, or people who like to say that black people were probably saw systematic racism, then if systematic racism was prevalent for 500 years in this country, what made it stop? And where did it go? And where did it go again? This is a question that's never answered. What made it stop? For 500 years, it has benefited white society from mistreating black people. So why are we supposed to be convinced otherwise that it just disappeared? It's no more. It just went away. White people decided that they just want to. They're not like that anymore. They want to be nice. After 500 years, what made it go away? What stopped systematic racism? This is a question that nobody can answer. Nobody can answer because I'm not into the whole thing trying to prove that there's such thing as systematic racism because really the white people who repeat that, like Bishop Carroll and a lot of the conservatives, they know. But the thing is, they want to have this thing where they play dumb and tell us that our experience isn't real and as I tell people by white people all the time, your opinion isn't invalid because you can't tell me how to feel. Just like a rape victim who was raped, the rapist who raped them, they can't come and tell them how to feel. Or a serial killer who has victims that he can't tell the victims that he killed families how to feel. If there's no victim mentality, we wouldn't have a victim mentality if there was nothing going on. You can't call a foul if nothing's happening. This idea that black people just have a victim mentality. Why do we have a victim mentality? We had pulled ourselves up by the bootstraps over and over and over, historically speaking. And every time black people have made it up this head, up to the head, it's always been a barrier because if you look at history, historically speaking, like I said, I talk about Roosevelt, I talk about Tuso Oklahoma, Black Wall Street, the successful black economic basis that people had were basically systematically destroyed, wiped out. So black people have pulled this stuff by the bootstraps. But black people are the only people that are sabotaged. We have been sabotaged, and this is just historically speaking. All blacks need to get together. Chicago, all these other places have had areas that has been economically successful. What happened to them? They were burnt down to the ground. And people don't think that, excuse me, people don't think that the past doesn't affect the future. You don't think that poverty that's in these communities that we live in, you don't think that what from them having their economic base burnt down to the ground has anything to do with it? But we just complain, we're just victims of it. We are victims under circumstances by people who decide to practice the system of non-justice. They tell me that there's no systematic racism, but yet, at the same time, black people make up 13% of America, but we're 7 times more likely to be falsely convicted than any other group. But there's no systematic racism. If there's no systematic racism, why are black people going to jail, guilty or innocent, more than anyone? Why? And the question that's never answered is, if systematic racism was prevalent for 500 years, what made it stop? Why did it go away? This is a question that's never answered. We cannot get you people to give us a legitimate answer to this question. Okay, if it's none today, as you said, it was a factor before. What made it go away? What made it stop? No one can answer that question. No one. They have not even the black people who stand in the forefront and repeat dumbass talking points. Your Larry Elders, your Herschel Walker, the people who don't, being successful, having money, it doesn't stop injustice. It doesn't take away. You still can be a victim of injustice. Having money, you just got some money. You know, you have done things to where you have been successful to strive and become something, but that doesn't mean that there is no such thing as injustice. As being that there is injustice, that is systematic racism in itself, because there's no equality. Like I said, with all the police shootings, the cops get in the way, that's the prime example of the systematic racism, because the victims, especially black people who are killed more than any racial group, the victims don't receive justice. And this is a fact over and over and over and over. Black people are killed more by the cops. And even though people will say, well, white people are killed more by cops, but white people make it more, and more white people killed by cops are under dangerous. So the systematic part is blacks getting killed by law enforcement and the cops getting away simply because they're backed by police unions. The police unions are backed by politicians, certain judges, and there's no type of justice. And people who think that we're wrong for wanting justice, we're wrong for wanting equality. So that's why I say to people, if you say that there's no systematic racism, you're saying that history is a lie. History is just, I guess Dr. King, Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, and the Black Panthers and all the civil rights leaders are just, they were just crybabies. And people would say, oh no, that was back then, but what has changed? Where does systematic racism go? What made it stop? What made it stop? That's a question that has not been answered. And they can't answer the question. They can't answer the question. What made systematic racism stop? We, as a group, actually had a civil rights movement to tell white people, hey, you stop being racist towards us. We had a civil rights movement. No other group in the world has had a civil rights movement to take a stand against our own government that practices a system of non-justice. And people make us try to feel bad for wanting justice. The fact that there is no justice is the systematic racism that we endure. And if you want, it does not matter what you say because your experience isn't the same. What made systematic racism go away? What made people change their minds after 500 years? After the system of treating people different based upon color of skin has been a beneficial factor to white society. Why did it stop? Where did it go? That's a question that's not answered. And people have been deflecting it and they tell us systematic racism was in the past, but it was in the past. Like I said, more black people are going to jail. We only make up 13%, but we're making the numbers of the prison system. And most white people are in jail for non-violent drug offenses. So if there's no systematic racism, why are we going to jail more systematically? And you can't say, well, we just commit more crimes, most crimes. We're committing most of the crimes. We're not committing most of the crimes in America because obviously, if you look at the numbers, we're falsely convicted more. So everyone comment, good comment. That's all I gotta say. If you want to follow my Facebook at Jersey Boy and Brooks Classic, just Jersey Boy and Brooks Chop It Up. And somebody please just answer my question. If you say that there's no systematic racism in this country, it doesn't exist anymore, what made it stop? And why are we supposed to be convinced otherwise? That it's just stopped. Like 500 years. It was prevalent for 500 years. All of a sudden, it just goes away. Why? what makes systematic racism stop? And that's a question that people cannot answer, and we have not found anyone yet to give us a legitimate answer. So if you can answer, help me out. That's all I gotta say.